Hello and welcome back to the course. In this video we're going to talk about adding the components for our event app. So the first thing I want to do is change the name of my app. So I'll click up here in the area that says Screen 1 and I'll rename this Event App. And then the first thing we're going to add as far as components are concerned is an image component, and we're going to add our header image here. And I've preloaded these images already. By now in the course you should know how to upload the images, so we'll just go on from here. I'll go ahead and click on the event app header, which again is going to be in your online course or available in the downloaded course, and I'll click OK, and we'll see that our image shows up here, our header image. Now we're going to add 4 buttons, and we're going to have some spacers in between those buttons. So the next thing I want to do is add a table arrangement. So we'll go to our screen arrangement drawer. We'll drag a table arrangement in right underneath this image, and we're going to have 1 column on this table arrangement, and we're actually going to add 8 rows. And we're going to change the width here to fill parent so it goes all the way across the screen. And up to this point in the course we've been adding mainly buttons to get App Inventor to do what we want it to, but in this case we're actually going to use a list picker. So I'll just drag that in here. And let me take a second to explain the list picker. A list picker essentially does what a button does. When the user clicks on it, it'll take them to something else. In this case, though, with the list picker, instead of taking them, let's say, directly out to a website, it'll take the user to a list of websites that you have coded inside the blocks editor. And as you follow along in the course and with the videos, you'll actually create these lists for yourself, so you'll see what I'm talking about. So let's go ahead and change the text for this. I'm going to call it Upcoming Events. And the reason for that is because this is going to create a list of websites for us, or web pages, whatever you want to call them. And so when the user clicks on this, they'll get a list of different web pages for the upcoming events. And when you click on those items within the list, that'll shoot them out to the web. So before we go any further, I'm going to rename this. I'm going to call it my Events List Picker. And let's add our first spacer here. I'm going to use horizontal arrangements for these. And for each one, we're going to use fill parent for the width. And for the height, we're going to use 7 pixels. That's just something that I found that looks pretty nice when we put this app together. And then we'll go ahead and add our second component here. And we're going to add another list picker because we're going to create then a list of maps. We're going to create a list of Google Maps, so when the user clicks on one of the maps in the list, it'll take them out to theoretically a location where each one of these events is being held. So I'm going to change the text for the button and call it Event Maps. And then right away I'm going to change the name of the component itself to the Maps List Picker. Alright, so let's add another spacer here. We'll use our horizontal arrangement. We'll fill the parent, and we'll use 7 pixels as our height. The next component we're going to add is a button, and this is going to be our About Us button. In the end, it's going to take us out to a page of text, and the page of text is just going to describe kind of what this company does and just give the user some more information on the company itself. Alright, so we've got that in there. We've got our text changed, so let's go ahead and rename this, call it the About Us button. And we'll add 1 more spacer here. We'll fill the parent with the width and make the height 7 pixels. And we'll add 1 more button here. And what this button is going to do is take us to a QR code. So in this case, we're actually going to call this button Share This App, so that the user knows what it does. And we'll rename the button. We'll actually call it the QR code button. And so in the end, what this button is going to do is take our user to a new page or a new screen inside the app. And when they get to this new screen, there's going to be a QR code that somebody else with an Android phone can actually scan, which will then take them to the Android market where they can download this app. And before we create our new screen with our QR code on it, we're going to add a couple of activity starters. One's going to be for this upcoming events list picker, and one's going to be for the event maps list picker. So to get our activity starters, we go right now to the other stuff drawer. And I'm just going to go ahead and pull 2 of these in here. And I'm going to highlight the first one, and we'll rename that. We'll call it the Events Activity Starter. And then I'll do the second one here. We'll highlight that, and we'll call that the Maps Activity Starter. And again, this is just so that we know which activity starter is going to apply to which list picker. Now the last thing we're going to do is add a screen. We haven't done this yet in the course, but up here you'll see that we have screen 1 in the viewer. And you can go up to the button here called Add Screen. And then we're actually going to rename this. We'll call it the QR code screen. And in a second here, we'll see that our QR code screen shows up right here. And we'll talk a little more about multiple screens when we get into how you actually set up the blocks to make these work. But just as a quick overview here, as you add another screen in App Inventor, you can sort of think of it as a brand new app. And essentially what you're going to do is tell App Inventor, when they click on, let's say, About Us, or let's say share this app, it's going to open up this new screen. It's not going to be a new app, it's just going to be a new screen. And then when they're done with this screen right here, you want to have some sort of a button or a control mechanism that closes this screen out. So if I were to click on a button up here, it'll close that QR code screen out, and it'll take us right back to screen 1. So essentially these screens are going to be talking to each other, but you can kind of think of them as little separate apps. So let's go back to our QR code screen, and I'm going to add a button here. And I'm going to just call this one Back. And that looks a little bit small, so I'm just going to change the font size a little bit. Great, so we've got a back button. Now I'm going to add an image component for a QR code. And in the picture area, I'll just add our events QR code. Click OK on that. And then just for giggles, I'm going to fill the parent with both the height and the width on this QR code here. And now what's going to happen is when we click on Share This App, then the QR code screen is going to come up, and the user can scan this in with a QR code reader. And when they're done with that, they can click the back button, and that'll actually close out the QR code screen and take us right back to screen 1. Now we haven't obviously coded the blocks for that, and we'll talk about that later, but that's essentially how this is going to work. That's it for now. So when we come back, we'll be talking about how to plug in your blocks for setting up a list of web pages.